This is my Snapshot Sarengeti lab report. Okay, so as an introduction, my research question is, do a higher number of wildebeest in a habitat correlate with a higher number of lions? So my hypothesis is, if there is a higher concentration of wildebeest in a habitat, then there will be a higher concentration of lions within the same geographical area because lions are natural predators of wildebeests. And following that, my null hypothesis is, if there is a higher concentration of wildebeest in a habitat, then there will be no correlation with the number of lions in the same habitat. Okay, so this is my methods used slide. My variables used in my lab report are female lions, male lions, and wildebeests. Although female lions do a majority of the hunting within a pride, my research question relates to lions as a species, not just those who do the hunting or a specific gender or sex. So I wanted to include male lions as well as female lions within my variables. So my data was filtered using lion risk wet, which refers to the risk of lion predation during the wet season, number of animals to understand the frequency of each animal, longitude and latitude to understand the location of these populations, and habitat to see correlations between where each animal lives. So the time of year I wanted to use for this experiment was the wet season, which would be from around November to April, or about 6 months. The reason I chose the wet season as opposed to the dry season is because, according to lionrecoveryfund.org, animals in the Serengeti are much more dispersed during the wet season, and they are much more spread out on, lush green plains than around sources of water during the dry season. So in seeing if a higher number of wildebeest in a habitat correlates with a higher number of lions, I thought it would be more representative of like a proper answer if their populations still correlated, even in a season where animals are much more dispersed and spread out, rather than gathered around the same area. And then the graphs I used were scatter plots that mapped longitude and latitude of lions and wildebeests, bar chart plots that showed number of animals correlated with habitat. And although it wasn't a graph, I still used spatial distribution maps just as like a secondary thing to see a wider picture of how the populations are distributed. Okay, so the first graph I want to take a look at is the bar chart plot with habitat and animal count. So the graph would tell me the relative frequency of each species as it relates to the specific habitat they may reside in. This is perhaps the best graph, in my opinion, at addressing my hypothesis as it relates directly to habitats wildebeest live in, as well as the number of each animal in each habitat. My hypothesis is, if there is a higher concentration of wildebeest in a habitat, then there will be a higher concentration of lions within the same geographical area, because lions are natural predators of wildebeests. And we can see a correlation between both male and female lion populations and wildebeest in each habitat. We can see that the habitat most inhabited by wildebeest is grassland with trees, and the most inhabited habitat by both male and female lions among the four is also grassland with trees. Open grassland and open woodland shrubs also have a decent amount of lion population, with open woodland shrubs having the second highest density of wildebeests. The second graph I want to take a look at is the scatter plot, which shows male and female lions as well as wildebeest frequency as it relates to longitude and latitude. This graph also does a great job at addressing the relation between lions and wildebeest within a given geographical area, which could prove or disprove my hypothesis. And as you see here, while wildebeest cover a much wider area of space than lions do, we will still see a correlation between where lions choose to reside and where wildebeest are. Within both the male and female lion graphs, we see more dots that are a combined blue and orange color than we just see orange. And just orange would just be lions in an area, which points to the conclusion that lions inhabit areas with wildebeest more than they inhabit areas without them. So as we can see here, there's grayish, greenish, bluish dots all over the place on both graphs, and there's more of these discolored dots than there are just orange dots. And then these are the spatial distribution maps of lion frequency as well as wildebeest frequency throughout the Serengeti. The top left is the wildebeest frequency, so we can see down here that there are many wildebeest in this area. They're all over the place, all over the Serengeti, distributed pretty evenly. Higher numbers are down here in the bottom right, and we can see them in the mid-range as well. And then within both female and male, we can see a correlation. There's higher frequency where there's more wildebeest, So the research conclusion, as a restatement of my hypothesis, if there's a higher concentration of wildebeest in a habitat, then there will be a higher concentration of lions within the same geographical area. And we see with the bar chart plot that the habitat most resided within by the wildebeest also has the highest number of lions, both male and female. We see that as it relates to longitude and latitude, there are more shared locations by both lions and wildebeest than there are locations lived in by just lions. And the spatial distribution map also points to that conclusion that lions live around or very near to locations with higher frequency of wildebeest. This points to the conclusion that lions are in fact natural predators of wildebeest and will be in higher concentrations when wildebeest are present in an area. And what does this mean in terms of broader biological implications? It shows how predator-prey dynamics shape ecosystems. There's a variable of control where the availability of prey determines a predator's population size and where they inhabit, so the larger number of wildebeests determine where lions go. It also shows that predator ranges are not random, but in fact are structured around where their prey resides in an ecosystem, so they're not just randomly distributed for no reason. So assumptions and confounding variables. One assumption being made is that lion populations at locations that correlate with wildebeest populations are hunting and eating said wildebeest, and not just living within the same area due to chance. This is an assumption that is made because lions are carnivores, meaning that they need meat to survive, so it is imperative to assume that, wherever pride chooses to live, there must be food to continue to survive. They wouldn't just choose an area for no reason. They would choose an area because that's what is best for the pride to continue living. Another assumption being made is that the trail cam data is accurate. For any of the conclusions drawn from this experiment to be reliable, the data being used must be approximately accurate. So it must be assumed that there weren't any or very minimal mistakes made in identifying animals correctly by the trail cams, inaccurate locations associated with trail cams, or any other factors that could skew that data. A confounding variable that may impact this experiment is human error. There could be a relationship between human activity, such as those who set up trail cams, and patterns of movement between lions and wildebeest. This may bias results because while I see a relationship between population size and area, this may not be representative of areas not being observed by the trail cams or on a wider scale of the Serengeti. Another confounding variable is water holes or bodies of water in general. Animals tend to congregate around where water is accessible to them, and this may bias results because both lions and wildebeest may choose to inhabit areas with water nearby, unrelated to each other. The biggest alternative explanation of this experiment is other prey animals within any given geographical area occupied by wildebeests. So, for example, if both lions and wildebeest occupy the same habitat, the lions could be residing there not because of wildebeest numbers, but because of also flourishing zebra population in the same area. This may deliver these results because while I'm thinking lions live in a given area due to the large amount of wildebeest, they could actually be living there to hunt zebra or any other prey natural to lions. So for ways to improve the project, I think in a world where the money and time is available, GPS tags would give an exact, precise location of both wildebeest populations and lion populations, which would leave nothing up to interpretation of latitude and longitude or any other variable. This would build on what is already found, just with more exact data. And then video cameras may be more beneficial to trail cams to not see just pictures, but to actually analyze the behaviors of the animals. If a lion hunts a wildebeest, you could see it happens as it happens instead of, pictures leaving you to decipher what happened. This would give a more precise picture of how the animals actually act. And then other animal, analyzation would also benefit this experiment to isolate whether or not lions are hunting wildebeest within an area or other prey instead, such as like the zebra example, to understand where other animals are going or what's happening with other animals may improve the project. So for revisions that I made based on feedback from peers, I changed many things. My filter data, for one, was originally too wide and bland, so I narrowed down what I wanted to use as my data. My summary of the graphs and choice of graphs was weak before. I think I only had one graph that I'm not sure exactly what that graph meant either. So I redid my graphs and provided explanations as to what each of them mean. I gave much better implications of the results that I'd gotten. As before, I didn't give much of any implications of what my results meant. I just gave the results. And the assumptions made based on this improved much as well, giving actual assumptions made of the experiment and how these may bias data. And before I got feedback, I also had very minimal references, as pointed out to me. I think I had like one source. So I made sure to find more proper sources that helped me better complete the lab report. And one of the sources was actually Dr. Packer, so I thought that was interesting. These are my citations. This top one I used to better understand the biological implications of what something like this might mean ecologically, and that was also the source that had Dr. Packer in it. That second source there was to understand what the wet season meant and what the time period was for the wet season and the dry season in the Serengeti. And then that last source there was used to understand the differences in sex between lions and how the females do the hunting, or most of the hunting, and how each works into the pride. And then AI usage, I didn't really use AI for anything related to the slides themselves, but I did use ChatGPT as a sort of Google to search up what a confounding variable was, because I didn't know what that was before. But yeah, that is the end of my lab report. Thank you for listening and watching.